What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So, Michigan State basketball sees 3 players enter the transfer portal on Tuesday in Xavier Booker, Gehrig Normand, and shocking everyone, Tre Holloman entering the transfer portal. Now, we are going to go over each player here, kind of what this means for each of them, and then at the end, kind of what this means for Michigan State going forward in the immediate future of the transfer portal right now, and then what this means going forward into looking way ahead into next season. But before we jump into that, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We'll have more Michigan State basketball content on the channel. We'll have some spring football, Michigan State football stuff on the channel as well. Now that obviously, unfortunately, basketball season is over, we will dive into spring ball now. Look at kind of where the roster's at, some of the stuff, that's coming out of spring ball, spring camp right now. Obviously, no spring game this year, but, we'll have stuff on the channel here, all talking about it, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. So let's just jump in. We're going to start with Xavier Booker and Gehrig Normand here, because those were the two that seemed, you could kind of read the writing on the wall, especially not even plugged in. If you just kind of looked behind the scenes, it seemed like this was probably a possibility. And we'll start with Gehrig Normand, I guess. And Gehrig Normand coming in, I mean, obviously the comparisons to Matt McQuaid, obviously both being from Texas, both wing, shoot first guys. And, Matt McQuaid is one of my favorite Spartans of all time. So I obviously, loved the comparison, thought he could also get his shot, get to the rim off the bounce. And kind of like Matt McQuaid, was hoping for kind of that same evolution, figured that he would probably be, as he did, redshirt his freshman year, and then maybe this second year, get a little bit of run here, and then kind of in his, third year, his redshirt sophomore year, start to get some more run, kind of develop more. And as Matt McQuaid did, throughout his career, he came in kind of just about offense, spot up, corner shooting, three-point shooting, and whatnot. But then throughout his career, he developed into one of the team's, if not the best, team defender. I mean, he was, one of the best defenders, especially wing defenders, in the conference by the time he was a senior in that 2019 season where Michigan State went to the Final Four. So was hoping for that similar path for Gehrig, and obviously he's an incredible person and loved his high school tape as well, but an incredible person. He was an incredible teammate. You always seen him up on the bench, hyping up his guys, hyping up the crowd, everyone engaged with the crowd and the community. So definitely going to miss Gehrig here. As for where he could go, I seen like a put together list on Twitter of schools that, supposedly reached out to him. Obviously, you don't know if this list is true or, you saw some, obviously major teams. You saw like Ole Miss on there and other ones, and then you saw like some Bowling Greens, that kind of level. I think it depends what Gehrig is looking for. I definitely think you could go to a Bowling Green and, be there, second, third best scorer, average double digits and start. But I definitely think that he could find a role on, say even like an Ole Miss. Obviously, we just saw them. I think he could find a role there as, like a, in terms of immediate next year, like a, 6th, 7th man off the bench and, find his role and scoring there and, continue to develop throughout his career. But it's unfortunate because I really did like him and wish it worked out here at Michigan State for Gehrig, but wish him nothing but the best at his next stop, and we'll definitely be rooting for him. Now, move over to Xavier Booker. Obviously, Xavier Booker, former 5-star, one of the top players in the class coming in. Obviously, both of these players in Gehrig and Xavier were part of that class that was, labeled, the second best or so Izzo's class behind that 2016 class with Cassius, with Miles, with Josh, with Nick Ward. And unfortunately here for Xavier, it just unfortunately didn't work out. He had his opportunities. Obviously his freshman year, everyone wanted those opportunities right away. He got small opportunities, as the year went on. But it just wasn't, it wasn't there. The pick and pop game you could see was there, the three-point shooting, but the rebounding, the defense, some of the off-the-ball stuff just wasn't there. This year, he got more opportunities this year, and he had some really nice moments. He led us in scoring, I think, once or twice. I mean, but it just unfortunately wasn't able to fully work out and get there. And coming in next year, obviously Jordan Scott, Cam Ward coming in, they're going to be playing, the wing, 4-3-4, between them. And it seems like, at least the talk you hear other people talking about is, it sounds like, they can come in and play like right away. So that's even more minutes eating up, there on the wing or the 4 for Booker. And obviously Jackson's going to come back. Obviously he's going to be a starter. So, and they just really didn't run with. I would have liked to see a little bit more. It was talked about last year that they liked that Jackson at the 4, Book at the 5, or, however you do that, kind of liked that look. We didn't really see it this year, but, unfortunately, it just doesn't work out here for Book. And obviously, really wish it did, but you just kind of saw the writing on the wall. It just wasn't getting there, unfortunately. And so Xavier Booker decides to move on. I haven't seen any lists like we saw for Gehrig yet. I mean, I know it seems like I know this is just people throwing it out there, but heard like a Butler. I saw someone throwing Indiana out there. Obviously, he's from that area. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious. Kind of same with Gehrig. You're always curious when players enter the portal. What are they kind of looking for? Are you looking to go somewhere to be the guy? You want to go a high usage rate and average 16 to 20 a game, something like that, or are you looking to just go somewhere else to compete and maybe hey, I know I'm probably not going to come in and start, but be a 6th, 7th man off the bench. Come in, establish myself. Maybe you come in behind a senior, that is leaving, and then see how that goes. I don't know. I always question, that, because who's to say if another summer of development for Booker, who's to say that he's not the, 6th man off the bench, next year. Obviously we're losing a lot as we're saying here, as we're doing this video, we are, and obviously the offseason isn't done yet. So I don't know. I always question that, like, why not stay at the, Michigan State place you've been, whatever, but sometimes you just need to change the scenery. So, I don't know how wherever he lands, I will be rooting for Xavier Booker. Think he's an incredible person. Think he's a really good basketball player and a lot of potential, obviously, in there. And wish him nothing but the best, and I will be rooting for him as well wherever he ends up next. And then we will head into Tre Holloman. This was obviously the surprise of the portal edition entries. Obviously, as we said, Xavier and Gehrig, you kind of knew just from, basketball standpoints that, they weren't getting the opportunities, at least right now. They could have possibly next year, but you never know how it's going to go. So, and you obviously don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. But Tre Holloman, this was definitely the biggest surprise. As, maybe as more stuff comes out and you don't know what's true, what's not, you kind of, just reading some stuff it seems like the staff wasn't super surprised that this was the case. And then I know, I'm sure if you're even remotely online, you've seen videos like from Tre on senior night after Izzo let him, kiss the Spartan head as a junior. Him I think it was like tongue in cheek, like joking, asking like, "Oh, are you leaving? Are you, you're not going to come back?" And I think he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't think so." And obviously that has a lot more like weight and meaning now. And I'm not going to get into every rumor because it's all out there. You can read it if you're not. Until me personally, like, I'm not saying I don't read rumors, but I'm just not going to talk about them because it's nothing that obviously I have, direct knowledge of or anything. Seen it out there. I mean, people, talk about whatever about NIL deals or, having a place lined up before the season was over, the NCAA tournament. I don't know. That's just what's out there, but I'm not going to talk too much on it besides just mentioning that out there. But it is obviously very interesting because, going into next year, especially with the pending NBA draft decision of Jace Richardson, Tre, in terms of guard/wings, he was probably in line to be their number one option in terms of that route, unless they got someone from the portal. And if Jace doesn't come back and they got someone from the portal, obviously if Jace comes back, I don't think they get or need that type of scorer at the guard position if Jace comes back and Tre's still here as well. So, yeah, I don't know, because obviously your other number one option in terms of scoring is going to be Jackson Kohler. We saw what he could do in that Auburn game. We saw it the Illinois game. We saw it, a handful of times this year. So hopefully another summer, and then just see that consistently throughout the whole year. We saw the other parts of Jackson's game get really good throughout this year. So now just look and see that offense consistently all year. But with Tre, it's really interesting. I mean, he was a co-captain this year for a reason, obviously, that had that senior day moment against that school down the road, getting the players off the logo. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like struggling through my words right here because I don't really know. It doesn't, really make sense. I guess I can jump back, and obviously from different reasons. I remember before this previous class, before the Jeremy Fears, Xavier Booker, Cohen Carr, Gehrig Normand class came in. Before that season, so before last season, I said that, and I forget if it was on a video here or if it was, I forget exactly where I said it, somewhere, but I said, that point guard room is looking kind of crowded. I think it was even way before that season, because this was me just speculating and spitballing, going through the roster and everything. I'm like, does Tre transfer? Because I said this, and obviously this was for completely different reasons. And I said this at the time because I'm like, he's going to be here, and then you're going to have, at the time, it was going to be a senior year AJ Hoggard, and then Jeremy Fears, who obviously had so much hype and still does have all this hype coming in. Izzo hyped him up, and he's like the next guy in line, and Tre was in the middle of that, should I say. And who's to say that he, shouldn't have, or, wouldn't have started over AJ Hoggard in that, whatever. That was just I'm like, oh, he's kind of in the middle in terms of class. You had a senior AJ Hoggard at the time, would have been a sophomore Tre Holloman, then you got true freshman Jeremy Fears coming in. Obviously, everything happens, unfortunately, with Jeremy Fears last year, and he's not able to play, half of the year, and then has to come back. So then, obviously Tre sees more time, and Tre has made incredible strides throughout his, career from his freshman year to now. I remember, and still a cool moment for me, and this is just me because I, nerd out about this type of stuff, but I remember having a tweet. I forget if it was his freshman year or his sophomore year, but I had a tweet about his assist to turnover ratio, how it was one of the best in the Big Ten. And he liked it. And that was, for me, I don't know, that's cool. That's just because I'm nerd out about this stuff, and this is, what I choose to spend my life, obsessing about. But listen, I love Tre. I really love his game. I'm sad that he won't end his career here at Michigan State. It seems like obviously there's always the possibility that he can come back. It doesn't seem like that though, but when you look at it, and I say all that before to say that, when you think about it though, there is some basketball reasons that Tre could want to transfer. Obviously, like most people have talked about with this, who have talked on this subject, is, he was in the starting lineup for a good amount of this year, and then he was on the bench with the emergence of Jace and everything. So there is basketball reasons. Now, does this mean that Jace is coming back? No, it doesn't. But the basketball reasons is kind of going back to what I said, kind of almost 2 years ago, when I was like, does Tre want to transfer? Because he's going to be sitting behind AJ Hoggard, which, he was at the time. And then it seems like Jeremy is going to be in the fold right away. And which he was, and would have been even more, it seemed like, if he obviously didn't have, the unfortunate situation last year. So now you're coming in. Tre's going to be a senior next year. Jeremy, obviously, and especially with the last couple weeks Jeremy had, he had a really good close to the season and a really good tournament. So, he's obviously going to be the starting point guard next year. He's, he's going to be what makes this team go in terms of running the team and, at the point guard position. So does Tre want to play as a point guard? Does he want to play that true point guard position, whereas he would, be playing probably more off ball, situations, especially if Jace doesn't come back, if he's starting as the 2 guard, does he really want that, or does he, want more of that ball in his hands, ball handling role, which that could play a factor. That could very well be a big reason. That's why I say there is some basketball reasons to this too. Obviously, a lot of people are like, oh, this is the money, this is this. While that very well may be the case, especially if any of the amount of rumors of money that is being thrown around right now in terms of rumors, obviously nothing confirmed, nothing no. But if some of that money is true, it very well could be. But I just want to say that there could be some basketball reasons to this too, when you take a step back and look at it in terms of what Tre wants of his last year of eligibility in college next year. So it's unfortunate. Obviously, some of the schools, have heard Texas Tech being rumored, Arizona State. My mind immediately went to Minnesota, going back home. Who knows? I don't know. You never know. We'll obviously be back to talk about where any of these guys go, if any of them decide to come back. I personally don't think so, unfortunately. But that's unfortunately just this world of college basketball we're in. Now, in terms of Michigan State, if this is it's kind of a hard discussion at this time because there's so much going on. You don't know who's coming back. You don't know who's going. You have 3 transfers. You're waiting on the Jace Richardson decision if he should go to the NBA. Obviously, he's a lottery pick. He's a lottery pick if he went to the draft right now. It's just if he wants to come back. I was, for a good majority of the year, especially once he started, ascending, I was like, okay, yeah, he's probably gone. But kind of over the last 2 weeks, I've been kind of like, and this isn't anything that I've read or seen or anything like that. I just had a feeling that Jace is coming back. I could be completely wrong. He's a lottery pick, have, all that on the table. But I've just been under the impression and just had a kind of a gut feeling that Jace is coming back. So if Jace comes back, you probably need another wing. Like you went out last year and got a Frankie Fiddler. You probably need something like that. And then with Booker leaving, you probably need another 4 or a 5, probably a 5. Because as of right now, you just have Coop and you have McCullough. And I remember some of McCullough's film. You can kind of play him at the 4 as well. But then you got Jordan Scott and Cam Ward coming in playing the 3-4 as well. So it really just depends. If Jace does come back, then I think it's got to be not even a starter level. As long as Cohen's back, he should be starting at the 3. He needs to be in the starting lineup next year. Then it'll probably be a 3 and probably a 5 there. If Jace doesn't come back, then you need to get someone who can score off the bounce because there's not really anyone else on the roster right now that we've seen that can score off the bounce. That's not saying someone can't emerge. That's not saying Kurt Hane can. I think he's going to have a good year, obviously, in an increased role next year. That's not saying, Jeremy can't develop that even more. We've seen what Jeremy could do, but he thrives at getting to the basket, getting in the lane, him developing that floater, and being able to knock down a 3 or 2 a game. That's Jeremy's game right now. We need someone who, like Jace, like Tyson, who, not saying you have to go out and find a lottery pick or a, all Big Ten type of player, but you need to find someone who can get you a bucket off the bounce if Jace is not back. But that's currently where we sit at. We'll obviously be talking about it if there's any names that are coming for visits or it seems like Michigan State is, kind of in on. We'll be back to talk about it. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Wish nothing but the best for the 3 that are transferring out, Gehrig Normand, Xavier Booker, and Tre Holloman. We'll always be rooting for those 3 and thank them for all the memories they've given Michigan State basketball and getting Michigan State basketball back to the top of the Big Ten, winning the Big Ten and the Elite 8 run that they went on this year, all the memories that they brought. So thanks to all 3 of them. Best of luck in their next stops. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.